minute. Close your eyes. Picture a glass of water. What do you see? It's clear, maybe it's cold, refreshing. More importantly, what do you feel? Do you feel that connection to that glass of water drawing you in? Think about it, experience it, feel it, and now open your eyes. That glass of water is more than just something that you look at, that you take a drink from. That connection you feel is the reason you can pick it up and drink it without questioning, why you feel that draw to it without even thinking about it. But what if that's more than just drinking a glass of water? It's the result of power struggles, of colonial legacies, of engineering marvels, and of ecological compromise. What if I told you that drinking that glass of water isn't just drinking and taking a sip, but it's telling a story of forgetting, a story of privilege, and a story of control? And what if I told you that everything that you think you know about water is wrong? We've come to understand water based on myths, these myths that are built on very shaky foundations that we're not even sure when they were created and how it started. We think of water as simple, as clear, as abundant, but our relationship with water is built on these important foundations, these myths. The notion that water is infinite, that water is free, that water is abundant, that water is equal. All of those things are no truer today than they were 100 years ago, and the way that we're going will be even less true in years to come. These myths that have been built up over years and years, they shape how we use water today. The reason that you take that drink of water without questioning is because of years and years of building that relationship with water. They shape how we even forget about it, how we ignore it, and more importantly, how we waste it and how we continue to waste it. In 2016, I was living in Ottawa, Ontario. I was living, by all regards, a very average Canadian life. I had a job at a nonprofit. I had a dog. I had a child. I was living in renting a 2-story walk-up. I had the typical Canadian life, cold winters, short summers. That same year, in 2016, Canada's ranking for the Human Development Index came out. And like every year, we ranked pretty good. We tend to rank in the top 10. That year, we were 12th. And that's looking really at your ability to access resources, your ability to see services, your ability to live free in a democratic society. All of those things factor into it. So as Canadians, we do pretty good. But that same year, in 2016, there was also a different ranking. So 12th was the average. But what wasn't captured in the average was a little bit of a different story, and a story that connects very much to water. In 2016, the Alternative Human Development Index was created. And in that ranking, if we look outside of the average population, Indigenous peoples ranked 52nd. And more importantly, those living on reserve, First Nations, ranked 78th on the Alternative Human Development Index. And a big part of that ranking, not the whole story, but a big part of that ranking is access to safe, clean drinking water and adequate sanitation. A human right, right? 4 years earlier, Canada recognized the human right to safe water, but they didn't legislate it. And we know that recognition without responsibility is just performative. It's a performance to tell you that I think something's important, but I'm not quite going to put in place the steps needed to make sure that you have it. You see, the human right to water is, in fact, one of the myths that we continue to carry in our everyday lives. And that's an important myth to think about, because when we think about that a little bit further, we recognize it can be incredibly dangerous to play around with recognizing the human right to water and yet not have the responsibility for it. You and I, maybe the average Canadian, We use 300 liters of water per day. That's what we're told regularly, right? For most of us, we have no concept of how much water that is. Think about the glass of water that you just imagined. Now pick up that glass of water over 1,200 times a day. That's the equivalent of 300 liters of water per day. Think about that for a second. That's just what's coming out of the tap. That doesn't include all of the activities that we do on a regular basis. Think about the clothes that you put on this morning when you got dressed, the water required to make the textiles and to make those clothes. Probably not here. Every time you order something online for a slightly lower price, think about the consequences and water-related actions of that. What about the phones that we love and the chips that are inside those phones and the amount of water that's needed in order to produce those chips? We're not talking water straight out of the river. We're talking about clean, potable, safe drinking water. And what about that AI search you did this morning to help you better plan your day, to help you better make decisions? The thousands of liters of water that are required for one data center, for one search on AI, is massive, but we don't see it. It's invisible to us. But what if you had to carry it, every single liter? Would you make different decisions? Would you protect it more if you had to haul every ounce of water that you had to deal with? Part of the myths that we've been built on is based on a blueprint of control. It's been rooted in ancient systems over 2,000 years ago when the Romans built the aqueducts, these massive stone structures that are responsible for transporting water. But see, we didn't build those just to access water better. We built them to show our power and to show our dominance. Water became a tool of empire, a symbol of civilization. And to this day, it continues to be a symbol of civilization. Develop like us, you'll have water like us. Once you are developed and civilized like us, you'll be able to waste water as effectively as we waste water every day. That's the blueprint that we've been built from. Today, we don't build aqueducts, but we build pipes, we build dams, we build diversions, we build data centers. And isn't that the same thing? We still believe that in order to thrive, we must dominate water. And see, access to water is just a proxy for privilege and for control. Those with privilege have access to water. Those with access to water can gain control of water. Those with control of water have the power. And that can be a dangerous recipe in today's world. In Canada, we're not immune from this. Water is abundant, but we do not experience water equally across the country, from coast to coast to coast. And in developed countries and around the world, having control over water means that I have control over your health and your well-being, means that I have control over your land, and ultimately that I have control over your life. So when we talk about water equity and water equality, another myth that exists that we even have that, what we're really talking about is a redistribution of power. And combining those two things can be a really complicated way to think about water management, but it really is around power. The other thing that we've built up over years is that our solutions are rooted in extraction. They're not rooted in reflection. When we face water scarcity, we don't say, gee, what could I do differently? We say, where can I get more? We say, I can drill deeper. I can mine the oceans for water. And if all else fails, I can head up to space. I can look on the moon. I can look to other planets. I can find water elsewhere, instead of really thinking about what we can do differently, because we treat water like a resource that's meant to be conquered. But what if the answer isn't more? What if the answer is less? But the other piece is that water has its own will. It's not passive. It shapes us. We've tried to conquer it over years, but water has its own agency. It floods and it recedes. It disappears and it reappears. It has memory, and it has a footprint. It shapes our cities, our economies, our cultures, our stories that we tell each other. It's not just something that we use, it's something that we live by. And sometimes, very often actually, it reminds us who's actually in charge. It reminds us that we're actually in no more control than we were 2,000 years ago. And in reality, the moment that we tried to take power and ownership over water was the moment that we actually lost control of water entirely. One of the other myths that we grow up believing is that the solution to dilution is pollution. But dilution isn't actually solving the problem, it's just delaying it. It doesn't erase the pollution, it pushes it downstream to your neighbors, someone else's problem. Or it's on a different time scale. Pollution 20 years from now when I don't have to deal with it, 100 years from now when I won't even be around. See, the water that we have now is filled with microplastics. We're told that regularly, and yet we do nothing about it. Our groundwater has forever chemicals in it. Our fish are filled with mercury. These are things that will not go away with time. No amount of dilution will solve that pollution problem. Time doesn't heal for water. It just hides. It makes it so that one day someone will have to deal with that consequence, that sickness. It'll reemerge, reminding us of really who's in charge yet again. We're often told, too, that future wars will be shaped by water. Another myth. It's not in the future that that'll happen. It's already happening, and it's already been happening. In fact, every conflict that's existed for as long as we can remember has some connection to water. Currently, right now, there are active disputes that involve water. Some are direct, and some are indirect. Countries and leaders around the world scooping up land where we think there might be water underground, finding ways to make sure that people down the line are protected, not that the world in whole is protected, but that those that we feel we have responsibility for or control over are protected. Canada is not immune to that either. When water becomes scarce, that's when collaboration and cooperation collapses. And the question in that case becomes, well, who actually gets to survive? Who makes those decisions? Who's ultimately in control? Who's ultimately in power? It's equity in theory, and it's a nice idea, but it's inequality in practice. And we have examples all around us. We have examples 30 kilometers away. We have examples 10,000 kilometers away. We say water is a public good, but we act as though it is ours alone. In times of crisis, what do? We hoard. We protect ourselves. Our fight and flight kicks in. I need to make sure that I have enough water. Not that we have enough water. I need to make sure that I have enough water. During boil water advisories, some have them for days, others have them for months. And in Canada, some have them for decades. During times of flood, some communities are protected while others are sacrificed. And who is making that decision? During pandemics, some have water to wash their hands and others don't. We agree everyone should have water. No one in this room would say, I don't think that you should have water. But thinking something and acting on it is very different. You don't need a better example than any time you've gone to your local big box store during any kind of emergency and seen the shelves completely bare of water. We've all gone in to restock for our own selves, our own homes, to protect ourselves because we're worried. That is an action that is continued at all levels of government and all around the world because it's a natural reaction and something that we don't often talk about. Thinking back a little bit more to our story with water, I want you to think, well, what now? What do we do knowing all of this? Well, what if the most radical thing we could do wasn't coming up with a new technology, wasn't drilling deeper, wasn't heading to Mars to try and find water. It was for each of us to maybe slow down, take a minute, and close your eyes, to listen, to let our own stories with water guide us. What if water isn't a resource to be conquered, but a relative? What stories would you hear if you were really listening to what water was saying? What would change if we stopped trying to control water and started learning from it, living around it, not in it, respecting what it's telling us and who's ultimately in control? Because at the end of the day, your story and my story begins and ends with water. We are currently living the water story that's been told to us from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And right now, each of us in this room is writing the story for generations to come. Now is the time to change that story, to change that narrative. And so thinking back to that glass of water that you thought of at the beginning, what story do you want to tell? So I ask you, what story are you telling about water? Thank you.